May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always pleasing to you, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. What kind of Messiah, what kind of king, what kind of people? This morning, I shared some thoughts on these readings with the people who attended the 8 o'clock morning prayer service. And one of them said something really fascinating. She said, things were really bad when Jesus was crucified. And they seem like they're still really bad today. So what gives? What kind of king did we get? And I was reflecting that this Sunday, this Christ the King celebration is something that is really very, very recent. It was inaugurated in 1925 by Pope Pius. And the reason that Pope Pius thought we needed another day of observance, a special day of observance, was because he looked around him in 1925 and he saw rising nationalism all over the world. And just think about what happened, right? We ended up with the Nazis and with Mussolini and the brown shirts. I mean, this was a scary and dangerous time in the world. And Pope Pius thought to himself, we need to be reminded that we are God's people. And so he created this special observance on this last Sunday of the liturgical calendar. And here we are today. And today we see rising nationalism around the world. We see countries like the United States and Brazil and others where populist leaders with with ideas that are extremely nationalistic are being elected. And so you look around, it's like, okay, what has changed? Pope Pius, it didn't work. Jesus, it didn't work. What are we supposed to do? What kind of Messiah are you? What kind of king are you? What kind of people are we supposed to be? So I got really excited this week when I was reading this passage because it was pointed out in one of the commentaries that I read that when Jesus is being led to the cross, at his crucifixion, he is challenged 3 times, okay? And those 3 challenges line up with 3 other challenges that he faced earlier in his ministry. And I want to share that with you now. I'm going to go back here. It's just too much to carry. All right, here we go. So, when Jesus was baptized by John, the very next thing that happened was that he was driven into the wilderness. And so here we have in chapter 4 of Luke, Jesus is tempted by the devil. All right? And the devil says, if you are the Son of God, command this stone to become a loaf of bread. And we all remember that wonderful response that Jesus has. He says, one does not live by bread alone. Now, for me, as a young man trying to find my way back into the church at a time of great skepticism and cynicism in my heart, this passage, this temptation became very, very important to me because I read this and I realized here is someone who, even when he is tempted, still chooses for the good, still chooses for the benefit and the well-being of others, still chooses to give of his heart. This is someone I could trust. That's the kind of Messiah that we have. If you are the Son of God, command this stone to become a loaf of bread. One does not live by bread alone. But the devil isn't done with him yet. He says, if he has more temptations to offer, he says, I will give you all the glory of the kingdoms and the world, all the glory of all the kingdoms of the world and all authority over them, if you worship me. And Jesus doesn't fall for it this time either. He replies, worship the Lord your God and serve only him. And so the devil takes one more try, one more temptation, and says, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down from this temple, from this peak, and the angels will protect you. To which Jesus replies, do not put the Lord your God to the test. So that's the beginning of Jesus' life as Messiah. That's the beginning of his public ministry, right? One does not live by bread alone. Worship the Lord your God and serve only him. Do not put the Lord your God to the test. And then we get to this end, at the very end, where he is being crucified, cruelly murdered by hanging him on a cross. And as he is being tried, as he is being led out to be crucified, the leaders, these are the leaders of the synagogues and the temple, scoffed and said, he saved himself. Let him save, rewind. The leaders scoffed and said, he saved others. Let him save himself if he is the Messiah of God, his chosen one. To which we might reply, or Jesus might reply, one does not live by bread alone. And then when they got to the place where he would be crucified and they began to assemble the cross, the soldiers mocked him and said, if you are the king of the Jews, save yourself. To which Jesus humbly in his heart silently replies, worship the Lord your God and serve only him. And then as he is hanging in pain, in agony, dying on the cross itself, with a criminal on one side and on the other, one of the criminals there derided him, saying, are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us. To which we can answer, do not put the Lord your God to the test. That's the kind of Messiah that Jesus of Nazareth is. That's the kind of king that Christ is. Christ is a king in this broken, nasty world where all of those problems still exist, where nationalism and populism and cruelty are still rampant in our government and in our politics, in our communities, where the world around us is still pushed to and fro by the temptations of the devil. And in this world, Christ answers by saying, one does not live by bread alone. Worship the Lord your God and serve only him. Do not put the Lord your God to the test. And that, my friends, is a roadmap for us. This is how we will answer the question, what kind of people will we be? What kind of people are we? Through our Christian service, through our congregation, when we are generous, we experience abundance in our own lives. When we are challenged by a world that tells us there's not enough, you need more money, you need a bigger house, you need a better car, you need a newer TV, whatever it is for you. You need more beautiful clothing, you need more friends or more popular friends. All of these temptations of the world that lure us away from God. Our response is to come together in Christian service as a congregation. And when we do this, when we are generous, we experience that we have enough already. We have enough. Not only do we have enough, but we have an abundance. We have enough to give. You remember that story? I want to say that Mother Catherine told us this story about an Appalachian family that had nothing, and someone was visiting them, and they gave him some of this canned meat that they had canned themselves. And the person says, "How can you give me something? You have nothing." And they said, "If we can give this to you, we're not poor, and we're not poor." That's the abundance. When you realize that you have enough to share, you experience abundance in your own life. We experience abundance in our own lives. And when the world around us tells us that the way to happiness is through drinking the right beer or following the right star or whatever, as in movie star kind of a thing, right? Our response is worship the Lord your God and serve only Him. And worshiping together, when we give our love and our trust to God, we again experience freedom in our lives. We're freed from those idols, from those temptations. And in that freedom, we experience abundance. The abundance that comes from knowing that together we are enough, that we have more than enough. And in this world where it's still tough. It's still difficult. There are still children dying of dread diseases. There are still loved ones catching cancer and other things and dying. I mean, this world is still just as difficult and as full of struggle as probably ever. Now, Chris at the morning prayer pointed out that that's what we say because that's what we experience. But you can actually look back in history and see very real, meaningful changes that have taken place across the globe because of the influence of the Christian faith. Because the way of Jesus does change the world. But it doesn't cure the world. It doesn't make the suffering go away. It gives us, as followers of Jesus, as the people of Jesus, it gives us a way, the way of Jesus, to live in even this world and experience abundance, experience freedom. When we give to the church, as we've been talking about in our stewardship campaign, when we give of the first fruits of our lives by supporting our congregation, we experience that abundance in our own lives. We realize that we really do have more than enough. I remember when Jesus was tempted by the devil. At the end of all of those temptations, the devil has failed, and it says, when the devil had finished every test, he departed from him until an opportune time. Well, Jesus on the cross was the opportune time. And us in our lives, in this continuing world of struggle and pain, this is the opportune time, and the answer is the same. One does not live by bread alone. Worship the Lord your God and serve only Him. Do not put the Lord your God to the test. That's what we are about. That's what we are here for. So the next thing that we're going to do in this service is we are going to come together as the followers of Jesus. And for those of you who are members of this congregation, some of you already turned in a pledge card last week. And last week was so full that the gathering of pledges got kind of lost in all of the beauty and excitement of baptisms and chili cook-offs and everything else. So I want to invite you to experience that together today. And here's what we're going to do. First off, if you already turned in a pledge or you don't have a pledge card with you to turn in, the ushers standing in the center there have a card, and it says, "I already pledged" on it. And you're welcome to use one of those cards for this activity if that's what's appropriate for you. Just raise your hand and they'll bring one to you if you don't have one already. Now, Susanna is going to play this beautiful hymn for us, and we're going to sing it together. And as we sing, you are invited to come forward and place your pledges, your cards, right here on the table. We have there's at least one person in the altar party that needs a card as well. Okay, and then after you place your pledge card here, just gather all the way around in a big circle all the way around the altar, and we'll finish singing the song together. So that's how we will gather our pledges in. That's how we will make a public statement that we are followers of Jesus. And that's the only statement that you need to be making today. If you are one of our guests, you are welcome to come forward. I'm not asking you to make a pledge here on your first visit to St. Dunstan's Church. No, just come forward if you feel called to be a follower of Jesus of Nazareth, of Christ our King. All right.